Smithsted.
Okay. Gave us an excellent demo against you, and it's back again by popular request by those that heard her before and several who missed it.
A number of them have explanations on them as to what I did, and you can just look at them kind of while I'm talking and passing around. So, one of the main techniques that I want to explain is how to create texture under a painting before you even paint the painting. So there's some texture there already. I don't like planning ahead very much. I get an idea of what I want to paint, or maybe I have a photo or a number of photos I want to paint from. But I really should do all the things that all the experts tell you to do, like do a value study and do a little painting study and do all those things before you do the painting. I never do that. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, you probably should, because I run into a lot of trouble because I don't do that. I just want to get into the paint. And so, when you're doing texture underneath the painting, like I'm going to describe here, you have to be careful. You have to have some idea of where you want that texture, because you don't want it everywhere. It's really important where you put the texture. So in most of these paintings where I'm doing texture underneath, I've chosen just an area where I want the texture. The texture is usually going to be in the foreground, because when you look at a landscape, you don't see the texture in the background like you do in the foreground. And creating texture in the foreground helps create depth in a painting, because there's more realism in the areas where you have texture, or the illusion of realism. So the texture paintings are going to be from here over, and it's mainly texture in rocks and in wood. And I have several products here that I'll explain. There are various ways to create that texture. So I'm going to pass around rocks and wood.
Did you put a texture on the moss and fruit?
Yes, I did. There's one more here for the pile.
Thank you.
It's back there. You want to start half of them in the front and half of them in the back once you get done doing that?
Yes, we will.
Just a minute, I want this, I'd say that.
One more.
Don't worry, they'll be circulating in a second.
So on this one, you'll see more when you can come up a little closer. But there is a lot of texture in the background and in the table. And I did that by sanding back. So I created texture underneath, painted one layer of color, painted another layer of color, painted another layer of color, and then sanded back into it. And then you get all three layers of color kind of popping through at different levels. And so that's how I did that.
Is this oil?
These are all oil. I tried what, yes?
I was just wondering, you said you sanded it back. Do you have a preferred material you use to do the sanding
Yeah.
bit?
Oh, sandpaper. No, but,
What kind of grit do you use?
um,
You know?
it depends on how thick it is. I'll start off with a medium grit. I'm not ever gonna go rough.
Okay.
And then if I want a smooth surface to paint over, then I wanna go to a fine grit, just for final sanding.
As long as people are using the dry well.
I'll explain ways to cheat. Okay, so some of the products I use for underpainting to create the texture, I've tried a bunch of different stuff, including Fix-All that you plug holes in your wall with, and then Golden makes a number of products. You can use acrylic products underneath oil. You can't do vice versa, because acrylic won't stick to oil because oil is slippery even after it's dry. But you can use acrylic products for underpainting. So Golden gave me these samples. This is a molding paste, coarse molding paste, and a light molding paste. And then this is regular molding paste. It's just the light molding paste is kind of light and fluffy. I don't use that much. I normally use regular molding paste, it's just this thick pasty stuff. You can put it on there and it'll dry in about 10 minutes. So you got about 10 minutes to work, so I'll only do one rock at a time. And then when you can run stuff through it, like a rough sponge, like a loofah sponge, or if you want a finer texture, maybe a sponge roller that just creates a little bit of texture, or you can stipple into it, you can scratch into it, you can, try anything. You can put down a piece of paper or a piece of saran wrap and pick it back up and it'll really create peaks. So molding paste is the thickest and pastiest. But sometimes I want a really fine texture like for sand. So we've got some sand here, and in this painting, the only place I use texture is in the foreground sand. But when you get up closer, you'll see that makes a big difference in the painting. It really does. And that I created with acrylic gel medium. And I ran out, I don't have any with me. But I made the mistake of buying gloss. Don't ever do that if you're gonna paint with oils, because it's just too slippery. So I use matte molding paste if I just want a little texture. Matte gel medium if I want a little texture. If I want a thicker texture, I'll go with molding paste. And I have even done, like I said, the fix-all. I don't have any examples here of that. That's if I wanna just make like 3D. And I've done that a little bit. So I'm gonna pass these around. Did you wanna have them first so you can show them to your camera, or you can?
I think we did. Oh, is this another side?
However you wanna do it.
Sure.
And these are, it tells you what kind of paste I used. This one here,
A little bit further back so I can get the. There we go.
I used the heavy molding paste, only for the foreground. So you can see that there's really heavy texture in the foreground on that, but not in the background.
Are your paintings on canvas or panel?
Oh, good question. I used to paint on panel, just MDF board. But for two reasons I switched to aluminum. So now I only use two different surfaces. I use Sign Painter's aluminum, which is coated on one side with a white coating that you have to sand down, and then I put gesso over that.
So what did you say, one side is,
On one side, it has the white coating that you can sand down. Just rub it up a little bit, you don't have to sand much. And then I put gesso over it, and then I've got a board, right, but it's aluminum. The reason I like aluminum so much is it's lighter weight, it's archival, doesn't warp. So when I'm doing a large painting, like this painting is really heavy. If I had done that with board, it would be really heavy, but it's on aluminum.
so where do you get your aluminum at?
You can go to any sign painter shop. I always forget where this place is. There's one in southeast Portland that I go to. And I was just there like a couple weeks ago, and I can't even remember the name of it. But any sign painter shop can
Do
sell
they
it.
cut it for you the size that you want?
They will cut it, but they charge per cut. Usually you get a couple cuts for free. So I will get a couple cuts just to get it down enough to get it in my car. Because I buy a full sheet, like a 7 sheet of plywood. And you can have them cut whatever size you want, but I don't really know ahead of time what size I want my next painting. So I like to cut it myself. And you can either score it and crack it, or you can cut it with a saw. Then I do gesso it. I tried once to see how it would work, painting on it without gessoing it, and that's this one, and it was a pain in the butt. So I would suggest putting gesso on it, it painted yours better. What happened when I tried to paint straight on it is I would do one swipe and put the paint on, and the next swipe would take the paint off. So you want something that's gonna graduate. It wasn't doing very well on that.
You sand it before you gesso it though.
Sand it slightly, just to give it a little bit more tooth. Yeah. The other thing I paint on is cradle board. This is a cradle board. Comes just like this with a gessoed surface. They're not expensive, especially if you buy them directly from American Easel in Salem. So I go through Salem every couple months, and so I just stop by and pick up more, but they'll send them to you, and you can get them in any size you want, even non-standard sizes.
So like, how much would it be? Yeah.
This cradle board probably cost $20. So it's more expensive than the
No,
aluminum,
but that's,
but you don't have to frame it.
no, I know, I use credit board, and I paid a lot more.
Look at their website and their prices, they're extremely reasonable.
What's the name of that company?
American Eagle.
American Easel. This one is a print, this is the only print I have here, but I wanted to show you this technique I'm gonna explain later, but also show you how beautiful their prints are. You can get prints made directly on the cradle board. And these are extremely, this print cost me $35.
How do they do that?
How do they print it?
Yeah,
I don't know, because they have printed 36 by 48 images for me on cradle board.
so they just put it right on the board, it's right on the board?
I've never watched to
Is it by C?
What?
Is it by C, or do you know?
It's Jacques.
Your
American
place, so,
Eagle.
thank you.
It is Jacques.
Okay. I don't know how it works, my notes special.
No, any print I do is Jacques.
Can you say that again?
Jacques.
Thank you very much.
Jacques is an inkjet
think
type
she said-
print, but it's
You might wanna use
archival. Okay, backing back up to texture underneath. This one, I just putting the frame on, bringing it in. These frames are expensive, that's what makes me sad. Anyway, so I created texture in the trees, in the tree trunks on this one. And it's kind of hard to get that same texture and moss and stuff without doing that technique. You can do layers and layers of paint and create texture. This is just kind of a fast, cheating way to do it.
Do you have texture on the wood on the ground? It sure looks like it.
Not on this, because I didn't plan ahead where I was gonna put those sticks. And I don't want texture getting in the way of what I'm painting. So if you can't see the sticks on the ground here, so this is one thing I've learned over time. I used to try to put texture in a lot more places than I do now. But you have to know exactly where you want that texture to be, or it's gonna interfere. So maybe the texture would be going the opposite direction of the sticks, and would really deter rather than help. Texture in the moss and the rocks on this one.
Yes.
And that's my backyard. I get a lot of mileage out of my backyard. I live on the Sandy River. And then you can really see the texture in the rocks on this one.
Did you use a sponge on the moss to get that?
Yep.
texture?
Yep, I use a sponge a lot. Things that I've learned over time about painting texture underneath is, at first I wasn't careful to make sure there were no raised ridges on the edges. If I'm gonna do a rock, I'm gonna make sure that those edges blend in, because it really made an ugly, unnatural looking line around the edge when I wasn't careful about that. So don't do what I did. Make sure I'm not forgetting my. Okay. Any questions about texture in particular?
Can this be used on canvas, or does it need to?
I don't paint on canvas because I like to use a lot of texture.
Yeah.
I don't paint on canvas for other reasons. For me, canvas dulls the image. So before I discovered American Easel and their printing method, I used to get all my prints done on canvas, because that's all that was available, even though I didn't paint on canvas. And they always looked kind of dull. It just somehow absorbs the light in a different way than a flat surface. And I didn't like the way it looked, so I don't use canvas at all. Any kind of board or hard surface.
But you can use these mediums on canvas.
You can use the mediums on canvas, but canvas is flexible, so you don't wanna use anything that's gonna crack.
Okay.
So I wouldn't use a real thick, it would be fine to texture the rocks and stuff like that, but you're not gonna sand back on canvas.
No, not to sand back.
But yeah, you can use the texture on canvas,
Okay.
sure, and I did for years until I discovered this.
It just isn't as good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Did you do something special underneath to do the reflection?
say again?
Did you do something special underneath to begin with, to do the reflection of the ocean on that?
No,
Okay.
no, the only texture
Texture
underneath
is
is
there.
down here.
Okay.
So when I do use paint for texture, because sometimes I want texture, but I don't know where that texture is gonna be ahead of time. So I get going on the painting, and now I want some thick parts someplace. I use liquid impasto. And if you're an acrylic painter, there's acrylic mediums too that you can use.
And did they carry that right in regular art stores, or do you have to?
Oh, yeah, no, any art store. Yeah, this is very common. My favorite medium, by the way, is liquid, and I do use medium a lot. So more medium makes it paint more transparent, but it also makes it dry faster. So I used to get 3 paintings going at once, just because it would take days for things to dry, and I always paint in layers. But liquid impasto or this liquid, both make it dry a lot faster. Or the other one fell over in my car, and I guess, oh no, here it is. This makes it dry really fast. This is Galkin medium. It'll dry so you can paint over it in like a couple hours. And then if I wanted to go even faster than that, or if you painted with oil paint, some colors dry faster than others. If I really want to speed something up, I use I didn't bring it, and let's see, cobalt dryer or Japan dryer. They're kind of the same thing. Japan dryer, I like that. But that will make it dry like in an hour sometimes.
What is this again?
This is Galkin. And I'm careful how I use this because I like to mess around in the paint, and this will get sticky quick because it does make it dry pretty fast.
What's
Japan dryer. It's this purple looking liquid, like water, like liquid. And you put just a tiny drop into the paint, and it just speeds drying like crazy. I'm real careful with it because it's toxic. So I don't even breathe it. I hold my breath and put the drip in there.
And where do you do that?
Any art store.
Like
It's
Blick.
very common, Blick.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just starting to use oils, and the ones I'm using are the water-based water cleanup.
Yeah.
All of these textures and mediums and things are appropriate for that paint?
Yep, absolutely.
They make a water soluble version of the impasto medium. I just bought one. They make a water soluble version of the liquid.
They do.
Yeah, I have all of them because so.
Yeah,
they're
so
the
I
exact
would
same
use,
brand.
if you're gonna use just water soluble, I would get the one specific to us, but they are compatible. I used to do that all the time before they came out with the mediums. When they first came out with the water soluble oil, they didn't have all those mediums at that time. I didn't have much work. Okay, next technique, glazing and scumbling. So, I painted a lot of layers. You can get a really rich look if colors are showing through colors. I love that, and especially since I paint a lot of water. This is a good example because I painted the rocks and then I painted the water over it. The way I did the water was scumbling. So scumbling is taking some dry-ish paint, and these are brushes I often use for scumbling. There's some little ones here. Probably on the floor in my car. Nope. Well, anyway, I have some little makeup brushes for doing smaller areas.
Makeup brushes. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It is and it isn't, because makeup brushes aren't made as sturdy, and flake off hairs, you know? So you get a lot of hair in your paint. But I have found some really good makeup brushes over time, particularly the little ones that I brought, but where are they? I don't know. That don't lose hairs, and I use them a lot. So I usually take like this bigger, stiffer one, and it's just like stippling. And I'll take some paint that's mixed with liquid, especially white is opaque, so you need to mix it with something to make it transparent. And I'll stipple that lightly on there, and then I go to my softer brushes, and I really work that in. And I might do layers of that until I get it to look just like I want it.
Do you look at that through a photograph or drawing or anything, or you just do it from your mind? These.
All of the above.
Oh.
All of the above. I do work from photographs. I work on location, but usually I don't complete paintings on location. I bring them home and finish them in the studio. I make up stuff. I mean, sometimes I want to get rid of stuff in a photo or add stuff to the photo. Combine photos. You know, lots of possibilities.
Do you draw first? Do you draw on your painting first?
I draw first, but I don't draw specifics. I say this tree is going here, this rock is going here. And then that may change as I get to painting.
So you just paint your locations, you don't really do a drawing and paint on your drawing?
Oh, no, I don't do that. That's what I'm saying, everybody says you should do, and you probably should, but I don't.
No, I never said that you should.
Thanks. I know what you mean though, a lot of the conventional painting advice, you never get to your painting. Because by the time you've done it once, you're done.
I think we only have so much time, how do I want to spend it?
Yeah. I already painted it once.
This one, there was a lot of scumbling in the sky, just because I wanted to really softly blend those colors. So I might put down one color and then another color next to it, and then scumble them together.
So how you've had it? So you use the liquid on the layers before, and it's dry.
Correct. You always
And
do it
then
over a dry
And
layer.
it's nice and dry, and then you come over it, because otherwise it would lift.
Right. You can't do that right on wet. You just end up with a sticky mess. Okay. I will move on to the next technique if there's no more questions about that. Okay. Does anybody here do pours, acrylic pours?
Did we have a demo at one point? Do we ever have an acrylic pour demo? Pour the acrylic?
Oh, you should. It's so
You should
much
have
fun.
someone come do that. The blower is fine.
It's just so fun. So anyway, my painting is so tight and so focused that sometimes I just need to feel a little freer. So I'll go down to my basement and I'll get out my acrylics and put some Floetrol in there, and when you get a demo, they'll tell you how to mix it up. You put some water and some Floetrol and stuff in there and you make it nice and juicy, and then you pour it and let the paint just do its thing. Well, I'm not a good pour artist. There are fabulous pour artists, but I do use pours sometimes to create subtle backgrounds. So, this background on this one is a pour. So the background is a sky's acrylic. And this as well, the water and this bit of sky on this one are a pour. And I think that really adds interest to it.
How do you spell mine?
What?
How do you do it in the little spot? Yeah.
It's packed full of wet paint. It's
You
rough.
put, you should look up this technique, there's 1,000 videos on it. You can do a dirty pour, which is what I do, it's called a dirty pour. You put different colors in the cup. Some of this, some of this, some of this. You don't stir it. And then you dump it on the board, and then you roll it around, and you blow in it with a straw. There's various techniques, but a video will tell you a lot more than I'm going to tell you. It is really fun.
I know an artist, so we could rate them.
What?
They have a place in Hawaii where you go in and you pour things.
And they probably spin. They just yeah.
It's really
Okay, so pour. All right. Oh, this, I just brought this along because I did a bunch of pours and they've all sold at this poor little guy.
See, there's an example. Oh, that's beautiful.
I did a bunch of pours and then I decided what they look like. Well, several of them look like water, so I put fish in them. And I've got ones that look like whales, so I put orcas jumping out of the water. And I put, frogs and turtles and wolves. One of them looked like snow in the mountains, so I put wolves in it. Well, this little thing looked like an avalanche to me, so I just put an old snag in it. But that gives you more of an idea of kind of what a pour is. Creating interesting texture with pours. You might do a pour and you might find you really like this little corner and you want to do something with that, but the rest of it is like that. So you just use the corner. So I don't throw away my pours because eventually I'll come up with something where, I really think that would be like whatever. So there are other techniques besides pours where you can create interesting backgrounds. And I only have one sample of this right now. This one has a lot of texture in the sky. You watercolor and acrylic artists, you know how to make texture with salt and alcohol and all the cool stuff you use. Well, it's a challenge with oil to get those kinds of just organic, interesting, surprise textures. So I decided I was going to do that with the sky, and it wasn't easy, but what I did is I painted it one color, kind of the lavenderish color, and then I put another layer of light paint over that and tried spraying Gansol, which is odorless mineral spirits, in it. And it did break up the paint, kind of like an alcohol would do. And then that wasn't quite right, so I got a watered up ball of saran wrap and smushed that around in there for a while, and then let that dry, and then did it again with another layer, and just experiment that way.
I have to ask you a question. When you do the pour like the sky, then the rest, and it's an acrylic, right? It's not
Yeah.
oil?
The rest of it's all oil.
Oh, so you have oil and acrylic in the
That's
same
right.
thing?
When it's like 90% oil, and you can't really see the acrylic, because I do use acrylic sometimes for underpainting. And I let some of the colors show through, but it's all covered with oil. I call it an oil painting. But that one I call a mixed media, because that's a big piece of the painting that's not oil. Okay, so I'm gonna pass around the next crop of weird things. And it's just experiments in putting on paint and dabbing into it with tin foil or saran wrap or whatever, and then letting that dry, and then another layer, and maybe sanding it back, and do something else. And some of them, there's explanations on there of what I did, and some of them you can just figure it out.
Got it. Okay.
So next I'd like to talk about scratching through, and I love
This has got stuff on the back. Is this good? There's stuff on the back. Get that in there.
So what I do with the scratching through, this one, I painted the whole thing green, let it dry, paint black over the top or paint spray. Take this variety of rubber tools. Oh, I forgot to say, paint it all green, very light coat of linseed oil, paint black over the top, and then scratch through, just like you would have scratched board when you were a little kid. And I'm going to let you try this today. I brought a couple of samples, kind of like the way this was done, and I'm going to paint over it with the black, and you can play with the tools and see what you can create. So this one, I mean, you look at this and you think, oh my gosh, how much work is there in all that grass? That's how I did it. And then I went back after it dried, and I touched up here and there, of course, but 90% of it was done with this scratch through technique.
Well, it was still wet.
The green, or the black was still, oh yeah. You have to do it while it's wet, because if you wait too long, you're in trouble. And this one, I'll just put it on here. A lot of this grass in the foreground is that scratch through technique.
But the underneath has to be dry with black on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or-
But I did this and I thought the color looked a little dull, so I took one of my favorite colors, which is transparent red iron oxide, which is this glowing golden color you see. There's some of it in here too.
Yeah, she's doing a demo.
I
Let's do
just
these
slapped
later.
that on there and then scratched through that, and I liked it much better. Well, this is another one where you look at the foreground, you probably can't see it from a distance, but that's tiny little leaves in there, like a million of them. That's how I did it.
Do sectional.
I do it in sections, thank you for that. I'll do it in 3-inch sections, because if it gets tacky at all, you lost it. It has to be really wet when you do it.
Yes, can you do this on a regular canvas,
Yeah.
or you have to do it on?
No, you can do it on canvas.
It's very effective.
You absolutely can.
A tool or a brush to do that scratching.
Oh, I've got the tools right here. They're rubber. Oh, different shapes of rubber tools.
They sell them.
Which you can also get at Blick or wherever. I'm gonna pass this card around because this painting was 20 by 30. It was a pretty good sized painting. And there's a million leaves on there and it's sold, so I can't show you the original. But I had everybody to look at that was like, oh my God, how long did it take you to paint those leaves? So anyway, I just admit that I cheated. Okay, I'm gonna paint some black over these two, and I put them on a board so hopefully you won't make a mess of yourself because you can hold on to it. You know, I knew I'd forget something. I'm sure we could improvise, but I forgot my palette to mix the paint on.
Oh, does anybody have palette paper?
Oh, I do.
Oh, you do. Here you go, right there. We got clean ones too, if you want.
Okay, we'll do these when she's done with the demo.
So the linseed oil is already on your dry?
It's not, and you don't want it dry. I'm gonna put it on last minute. So I've got some black. Okay, and then I don't want the paint that thick, so I'm gonna put some liquid in it to thin it, because I found that if the paint's too thick, when you scratch through it, it makes those ridges around each leaf, because it's pushing the paint to the side, and I don't like that. So you want it thick enough so that it covers solidly, barely, with no extra.
So do you like 25%?
Never more than 25%. Actually, occasionally with glazes, I might push it to 30, but you're gonna affect the adhesion. If you put too much any kind of medium in the paint.
And is that under, that brown you did, is that in acrylic or is that in?
No, that's oil.
Okay, it's
Which-
fully dry.
Yeah, and it would have been fine to use acrylic, but I just used oil because I had time to let it dry. So I just kind of did mottled colors because you don't want a solid color on every blade of grass. It's gonna have some variation in color.
So when you did that green on that, originally you did layers of it. When you did the green for the strawberries, you did multiple colors of green, is what you did underneath?
I don't remember.
Did that have the oil on it?
Yeah, there's some variation in there. Oh, shoot. All right, guys.
Wipe it off real quick and throw it in a paper towel or. It went.
Yeah, I'm gonna wipe it off with the paper towel because I forgot to wipe. Oh, wait. We're doing a paper towel.
We're here to see you. We're very excited. I even use a little oil to clean it off when I make mistakes.
You what?
I even will add a little oil to help me clean off paint I put on by mistake.
I know, I could do that, but I'm just.
Game sold it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read it, so. I like Gamblin's products because they really are more environmentally friendly, they really make a point. Gamblin is a Portland company, by the way.
That's what's exciting to me. I like to buy paint from down the street.
Right, and the other local that is really good with that as well is in Salem, and that's M. Graham.
And Graham is local too.
Yep. Okay, what else?
And this is linseed oil.
It is. You could also do this with a layer of liquid underneath, which probably would work with a thin layer of other mediums as well. But I found the oil dries a little bit slower than the mediums, so it gives it a little bit more time. Okay, so that not only oiled it, but it took off the rest of the blood. I'll do a couple of these and kind of separate them so people, I think they might want to try this technique and come on and play.
So you could use like a rubber spatula or something rubber that is hard
You
enough
could.
that you can push.
If you can get a nice edge, you know, depends on what you're doing. I think a rubber spatula might be a little bit coarse, I mean, big.
You get these at Hobby Lobby, you get like 3 apples, 4 different sizes, shapes. So one is so flat.
So obviously it takes me a long time to do a painting. Like, I can do 1 or 1.5 a month, I'm happy, because I have other things in my life too. But I paint in all these layers, so it's really slow. And when you're painting a lot of layers, you know, I said I don't like to think ahead about where everything is gonna be or exactly what the painting is gonna be. But I do think ahead about when I look at something and I decide I wanna paint that rock, I'm gonna think about what kind of layering I can do to make it a more interesting rock than if I just, oh, that's a gray rock, let's paint that rock gray. So I'm gonna start, I figure, I look at trees or whatever and I say, what is the underlying color? What's beneath everything else? And I usually say purple with a tree or a tree trunk, unless it's backlit or something, you know. With rocks, I might underpaint one in a blue-gray and then underpaint another in more of a terracotta, you know, ochre, you know. So I usually work from a, no, I can't say that. I was gonna say I usually work from a light to dark, but it just depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll do the opposite. Like on this one, I started with the darker gray and I scumbled the lighter over the top of it. But with the water, I started with much darker blues and shadows and then scumbled the white over the top of it. Okay. We'll just put a few tools at each, and you can come play. Who wants to play first? All right, we need 2 people playing. Who's gonna play on this one? And if you don't find it scraping off enough of the paint, it's probably because I didn't give it quite enough oil, or I put too thick a black paint on there.
you like the Gamblin gel medium, for anything, or?
You know, I have Gamblin's mediums. I started with liquid and I keep coming back to it.
Liquid's your favorite?
I don't know if it's just water low.
Yeah.
But Gamblin has so many different mediums and I have it and I try them and I just don't like them as well.
But it's good for,
It looks like that's not coming through really brightly, so.
It's just because of the fluorescence in here. Makes it hard to see.
Yeah, but I think the black paint is not as fluid as would be ideal, because it should come through real sharp.
Yeah, I understand.
I just
I think it's called Punchberry.
Punchberry.
Bunch,
I would have come earlier if I'd known you all would be ready so quickly. I was
We like to
I'll be ready by 12:30.
We're lucky because we got to chat more than usual. We usually are annoying everyone by talking through the demos, but through the meeting. So we actually got to chat some.
And, hi.